Subscribe for more untold tales. In the shadow of war lie forgotten stories. Share your thoughts below. The heavy rain created small water droplets on the windows of the U.S. Army garrison in Mannheim, Germany, spoiling the view of the complex opposite. The Cold War was raging in Europe. No one knew the war would end within a year. Colonel Jürgen Baumann watched from his office window as the heavy rain pelted the facade of the German-American joint facility. As a German liaison officer, despite witnessing many strange things in his 23-year career, he was speechless in the face of what had transpired over the past 72 hours. It started with a phone call at 0300 hours on Monday morning. Dr. Emil Hartmann, the chief researcher at the classified biochemical defense laboratory 3 kilometers from the base, had reported a break-in. Not unusual in itself, industrial espionage was common enough in those days, with both sides of the Iron Curtain hungry for any technological advantage. But when Baumann arrived at the scene with his American counterpart, Major Thompson, they found something that made no sense at all. The laboratory's security system had been professionally disabled. Cameras, motion sensors, smoke detectors, alarms, all had ceased functioning within exactly 17 minutes. The perpetrators had managed to bypass even the highest level security measures, which were impossible to interfere with from the outside using the technology of the time. However, what horrified Baumann was that everything was still in its place. Not a single document, not a single piece of research material, nothing had been stolen. Instead, something had been left behind. "Tell me again what you found," Baumann said, turning from the window to face Dr. Hartmann, who sat rigidly in the leather chair across from his desk. The scientist looked like he hadn't slept since the incident. His usually immaculate lab coat was wrinkled, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. "It was in the Level 4 containment area," Hartmann began, his voice barely above a whisper. A manila folder, placed precisely in the center of the examination table. Inside were photographs and documents dating back to 1962. And these documents pertain to... Hartmann's hands trembled slightly as he reached for the glass of water on Baumann's desk. Operation SCHILDKRÖTE. It was before my time, but I recognized some of the names. My predecessor, Dr. Helene Strauss, was apparently the lead researcher. Baumann knew that name. Strauss had died in a car accident in 1971, along with her entire research team. 7 scientists, all killed when their van skidded off an icy road near Heidelberg. The official investigation had ruled it an accident, but whispers in intelligence circles suggested otherwise. What exactly was Operation SCHILDKRÖTE? Baumann asked, though he suspected he already knew part of the answer. According to these documents, it was a joint German-American project to develop enhanced interrogation compounds. Drugs that could break down psychological barriers, make subjects more compliant. Hartmann paused, swallowing hard. But that's not the disturbing part. Before Hartmann could continue, the door to Baumann's office burst open. Clara Weiss, the garrison's intelligence officer, stood in the doorway, her usually composed face flushed with urgency. "Sir, we have a situation," she said, slightly out of breath. "Eric Schaefer from base security is missing. His wife called. He never came home after his night shift. That was 2 days ago." Baumann felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Schaefer was one of only 3 people with override access to the laboratory's security systems. The other 2 were himself and Major Thompson. "Search his quarters immediately," Baumann ordered, "and bring me everything. Duty logs, personal effects, everything." Weiss nodded and disappeared down the hallway. Baumann turned back to Hartmann, who had gone pale. "Doctor, I need you to tell me everything about those documents. What makes them so disturbing?" Hartmann set down his water glass with a shaking hand. "The test subjects for Operation SCHILDKRÖTE. They were German and Turkish guest workers, civilians. The documents include detailed logs of experiments, photographs of the subjects before and after. Colonel, They were using our own citizens as guinea pigs. The room fell silent, except for the drumming of rain against the windows. Baumann had served through the darkest years of the Cold War, had seen his share of moral compromises made in the name of security. But this was different. This was evidence of crimes that, if exposed, could destroy careers, end alliances, and send people to prison. "Who else knows about this?" Baumann asked. "Just you, myself, and Major Thompson. I haven't even told my research team. Keep it that way. Not a word to anyone until we understand what we're dealing with." An hour later, Clara Weiss returned with a box of Eric Schaefer's belongings and a concerned expression that deepened the worry lines around her eyes. "Sir, Schaefer's apartment was unusual," she reported. "Everything was perfectly arranged, as if he'd prepared for an inspection. His uniforms were laid out on the bed, medals polished and arranged. And we found this." She handed Baumann a leather journal. He opened it to find pages of meticulous handwriting in German, dates going back 3 months. As he read, his blood ran cold. October 15th. "They think I don't know, but I've seen the old files. Dr. Strauss didn't die in an accident." October 22nd. Found reference to SCHILDKRÖTE in archive security logs. Why was this never investigated? November 3rd. Someone is watching me. Black sedan outside my building for 3 nights straight. November 18th. Made contact with journalist at Der Spiegel. She's interested but wants proof. December 1st. I know where the bodies are buried. Literally. December 15th. If something happens to me, check the old bunker beneath Building 7. The truth is down there. The final entry was dated 3 days ago, the night Schaefer disappeared. February 20th. Tonight, I'm going to get the proof. If you're reading this and I'm gone, know that I did this for Germany, for the truth. The guilty must answer for their crimes, even if they wear our uniform. Baumann closed the journal and looked at Weiss. Building 7. That's the old ammunition storage facility, isn't it? Yes, sir. Decommissioned in 1981. It's been sealed ever since. Get a team together. We're going down there. The entrance to Building 7 stood at the far edge of the garrison, hidden behind a cluster of maintenance sheds and overgrown with ivy. The heavy steel door bore warnings in German and English about structural hazards and asbestos contamination, the kind of signs that ensured nobody would venture inside without good reason. Baumann's team consisted of Clara Weiss, 2 military police officers named Leon Vogel and Matthias Riedel, and a Turkish-German translator named Silen Demir, who doubled as the garrison's cultural liaison. Baumann had included her on a hunch. If Turkish workers had been involved in SCHILDKRÖTE, they might need someone who could interpret old documents in Turkish. The lock on the door had been cut recently, the edges of the severed metal still bright against the rust. Vogel pushed the door open, and the team descended into darkness, their flashlight beams cutting through air thick with decades of dust. The bunker stretched deeper than Baumann expected, concrete corridors branching off like a maze. Their footsteps echoed off the walls, and somewhere in the distance, water dripped with metronomic persistence. "Sir," Riedel called out, his light fixed on the floor. "Fresh footprints in the dust. Recent." They followed the tracks deeper into the complex, past rooms filled with rotting wooden crates and rusted ammunition boxes. The air grew colder the further they descended, and Baumann noticed Demir pulling her jacket tighter around herself. Finally, the footprints led to a heavy vault door that stood partially open. Beyond it, harsh fluorescent lights flickered to life, triggered by their movement. What they found inside made everyone stop in their tracks. The room had been converted into a makeshift research station. Tables were covered with documents, photographs, and what appeared to be soil samples in labeled containers. Maps of the local area were pinned to the walls, marked with red X's at various locations. And in the center of it all sat Eric Schaefer, very much alive, hunched over a microscope. He looked up at their entrance, and Baumann saw not surprise but resignation in his eyes. "I wondered how long it would take you to find me," Schaefer said quietly. "I suppose it's over now." "Eric," Baumann said carefully, his hand moving instinctively to his sidearm. "We've been looking for you." "Your wife is worried sick." Schaefer laughed bitterly. "My wife? Yes, I suppose she would be. Tell me, Colonel, did you know that her father was one of the original researchers on Schildkröte? Dr. Helene Strauss was her aunt." The revelation hit Baumann like a physical blow. He'd known Schaefer for 5 years, had attended his wedding to Anya Keller 2 years ago. How had they missed this connection? "That's why you broke into the laboratory," Weiss said, understanding dawning on her face. "You planted those documents." "I didn't plant anything," Schaefer said firmly. "I returned them to where they belonged. Those files have been hidden in my wife's family home for 18 years, since Strauss died. Anya's father kept them as insurance, but he was too much of a coward to ever use them." "Insurance against what?" Baumann asked. Schaefer stood up slowly, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. "Against the people who killed Strauss and her team. You see, Colonel, that wasn't an accident. They were murdered because they were going to expose Schildkröte. And the people who ordered their deaths? Some of them are still serving in high positions. Some of them are in this very garrison." Baumann felt the weight of his service weapon against his hip. "That's a serious accusation, Eric. Do you have proof?" "I have more than proof," Schaefer said, gesturing to the tables around him. "I have the bodies." Demir gasped, and even the stoic Vogel looked shaken. "Not here," Schaefer continued quickly, "but I know where they are. The test subjects from Schildkröte, 23 German workers and 31 Turkish migrants. They were buried in unmarked graves throughout the forest. I've spent 3 months locating them, taking soil samples, documenting everything." He picked up a folder from the nearest table and handed it to Baumann. Inside were photographs of forest clearings, each marked with GPS coordinates. Accompanying each photo were soil analysis reports, showing traces of human decomposition, approximate dates of burial matching the Schildkröte timeline. "My God," Weiss whispered, looking over Baumann's shoulder. "It's all here. Names, dates, locations. The question now," Schaefer said, "is what you're going to do about it. Because, Colonel, I've already sent copies of everything to 3 journalists and the International Criminal Court in The Hague. They're waiting for my signal. If I don't contact them within the next 6 hours, everything goes public." The rain had stopped, but the clouds hanging over Mannheim remained dark and oppressive. In a secure conference room, deep within the garrison, Colonel Baumann sat across from Eric Schaefer, while Clara Weiss stood guard at the door. They had 4 hours left before Schaefer's deadline. "Tell me everything," Baumann said. "Start from the beginning." "How did you discover this?" Schaefer rubbed his tired eyes. "It started 6 months ago. Anya's father, Professor Keller, was dying of cancer. On his deathbed, he told her about the documents hidden in their family home. He said her aunt hadn't died in an accident, that there were powerful people who wanted her silenced. He'd kept the evidence all these years, but never had the courage to use it." "And your wife shared this with you?" "Not at first. She was terrified, wanted to burn everything and forget it existed, but I convinced her that these victims deserve justice. Their families deserve to know what happened to them." Schaefer's jaw tightened. "Can you imagine? 64 people just vanished. Their families were told they'd abandoned their jobs, run off, emigrated. But they were dead, Colonel, murdered in the name of science." Baumann studied the younger man's face. Eric Schaefer was 32, a career soldier with an impeccable record until now. What he'd done, breaking into a classified facility, stealing military property, threatening to expose state secrets, would normally result in immediate arrest and prosecution. But these weren't normal circumstances. "Who else knows about this?" Baumann asked. "Besides the people in this room?" Dr. Hartman, obviously, since I had to return the documents somewhere they'd be found. My wife, though she wants no part of it. And, Schaefer hesitated, and Victor Novak. Baumann's blood ran cold. Novak was the garrison's deputy intelligence chief, a Czech defector who'd been working with NATO forces since 1981. If he was involved. Novak approached me 2 months ago. Schaefer continued. He knew I'd been asking questions, digging into old files. He warned me to stop, said I was stirring up things better left buried. When I refused, he made threats. Subtle ones, but threats nonetheless. What kind of threats? He mentioned my wife's work at the hospital, how accidents can happen in medical facilities. He talked about my mother back in Hamburg, how elderly people are so vulnerable to random street crime. Schaefer's hands clenched into fists. That's when I knew I was onto something real. You don't threaten someone's family over ancient history unless that history can still hurt you. The door opened suddenly, making everyone tense. Major Thompson entered, his American uniform crisp despite the late hour. Baumann had called him an hour ago, but hadn't expected him so soon. Gentlemen, Ms. Weiss. Thompson nodded to each of them. His expression was grim. I've just come from an emergency meeting with General Morrison. We have a problem. Bigger than the one we already have? Baumann asked. I'm afraid so. Victor Novak is dead. The room fell silent. Schaefer's face went white. When? Baumann demanded. His body was found an hour ago in his apartment. Apparent suicide, sleeping pills and vodka. He left a note confessing to the murder of Eric Schaefer. But I'm not dead, Schaefer said, confused. Thompson's expression was grave. Not yet. But according to the note, you were supposed to be. Novak claims he killed you 3 days ago and buried your body in the forest. He provides specific coordinates. Baumann's mind raced. Someone is trying to frame both of them, make it look like Schaefer is dead and Novak killed him, then killed himself out of guilt. Or, Weiss said slowly, someone wanted Novak dead and is using Schaefer's disappearance as cover. Sir, we need to check those coordinates, if there's actually a body there. Already done, Thompson said. We found a fresh grave exactly where the note indicated. The body inside has been dead for approximately 3 days. But here's the thing. It's not Schaefer. It's a Turkish man, approximately 45 years old. No identification yet. Selin Demir, who had been silent until now, spoke up. May I see the description? Thompson handed her a preliminary report. As she read, her face paled. I might know who this is, she said quietly. Fatih Arslan. He's been missing for 3 days. He worked as a janitor here on the base. But he was investigating something. Investigating what? Baumann asked. The disappearances from 1962. His uncle was one of the Turkish workers who vanished. Fatih had been researching genealogy, trying to trace his family history. Last week, he told me he'd found something, evidence that his uncle had been at this garrison when he disappeared. The pieces were falling into place, painting a picture Baumann didn't like. Someone was cleaning house, eliminating anyone who knew about SCHILDKRÖTE. But who, and why now, after all these years? We need to move fast, Baumann said. Thompson, can you secure the base? No one in or out without authorization? Already done. Morrison ordered a lockdown 20 minutes ago. We're calling it an emergency readiness drill. Good. Schaefer, I need those coordinates. All of them. We're going to exhume those bodies tonight, before anyone can stop us. Colonel, Weiss interjected, that's going to require authorization from... Then we'll get it. Thompson, can your people handle this? The American major nodded. I'll get a team together. But Baumann, if this gets out, if the media catches wind of mass graves on a NATO base, then we'd better make sure we control the narrative. Schaefer, contact your journalists. Tell them to wait. We're going to do this right, through official channels. And if the official channels try to bury it, Schaefer asked. Then we go to your plan B, but first, we find out who's behind this. Someone killed Novak and Arslan, and I doubt they're finished. 3 hours later, under cover of darkness, 2 teams worked simultaneously at separate forest sites. The first location yielded 3 bodies, wrapped in deteriorated canvas, buried approximately 2 meters deep. The second site contained 5 more. By dawn, they had recovered 14 bodies in total, each showing signs of chemical exposure consistent with the SCHILDKRÖTE documents. Dr. Hartmann, who had been called in to assist with preliminary analysis, looked shaken as he emerged from the makeshift morgue they'd established in an unused hangar. "It's all true," he said to Baumann. "These people were subjected to massive doses of experimental psychotropic compounds. The tissue damage is consistent with the formulas in the recovered documents. This was systematic murder disguised as research." Inside the hangar, military medical examiner Dr. Sophie Lang was cataloging the remains with clinical precision. She'd been flown in from Frankfurt at Baumann's request. He needed someone outside the garrison's regular chain of command. "Colonel, you need to see this," she called out, standing over one of the examination tables. Baumann approached, steeling himself. The body on the table was better preserved than the others, wrapped in plastic, as well as canvas. "This one is different," Dr. Lang explained. "The others died from chemical poisoning, but this one shows signs of blunt force trauma. And look at this. He was buried much more recently than the others. I'd estimate maybe 18 years ago." "That would be 1971, Baumann said, "the year Dr. Strauss died." "There's more. I found this in his pocket." She held up a small metal disc, tarnished but still legible. It was an identification tag for a NATO security contractor named Tobias Lehman. Baumann took the tag, turning it over in his hands. The name was familiar. He'd seen it somewhere recently. "The personnel files," Weiss said suddenly. "Lehman was listed as one of the casualties in the van accident with Dr. Strauss. But if his body is here, then who died in that van?" Baumann finished. The implications were staggering. The official story of the accident was a lie. But more importantly, if Lehman's body was here, buried with the SCHILDKRÖTE victims, it meant he'd likely discovered the truth and been killed for it. "We need to exhume the bodies from that accident," Thompson said. "If they're not who we think they are." "No," a new voice said from the hangar entrance. "That won't be necessary." Everyone turned to see Jürgen Baumann's superior, General Rolf Steinberg, flanked by 4 armed military police officers. The general was a tall, austere man in his 60s with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. "General," Baumann said carefully, "I wasn't expecting you." "I imagine not. This operation was supposed to be contained, Colonel. Instead, I find you've turned it into a circus." Steinberg's gaze swept over the covered bodies. "All of this needs to be reburied immediately. That's an order." "Sir, with respect, these are murder victims. We have an obligation." "You have an obligation to follow orders, Colonel. These people died nearly 30 years ago. Nothing we do now will bring them back. Their families deserve to know the truth," Schaefer said, stepping forward, despite the MP's hands moving to their weapons. Steinberg's expression was contemptuous. "Sergeant Schaefer, you're supposed to be dead. Perhaps we should rectify that." The threat hung in the air like a physical presence. Baumann moved subtly, positioning himself between Steinberg and Schaefer. "General, are you admitting to knowledge of these crimes?" "I'm admitting nothing, but I am ordering you to cease this investigation immediately. These bodies will be cremated, the documents destroyed, and everyone in this room will sign a non-disclosure agreement. This matter is closed." "I'm afraid it's not that simple," Thompson said. "I've already reported our findings to my superiors at NATO headquarters. They're very interested in learning more about a secret program that used Allied citizens as test subjects." Steinberg's face flushed red. "You had no authority." "I had every authority. This is a joint facility, General. You can't unilaterally decide to bury evidence of war crimes. War crimes? Steinberg laughed bitterly. We were preventing war, Major. The Soviets were developing their own chemical weapons, their own interrogation drugs. We needed to match their capabilities. So you experimented on innocent people? Dr. Lang asked, her voice filled with disgust. Innocent? They were vagrants, criminals, people who wouldn't be missed. Their sacrifice helped us develop countermeasures that saved thousands of lives. You son of a bitch! Schaefer lunged forward, but Vogel and Riedel held him back. You knew. You knew all along. Steinberg smiled coldly. Of course I knew. I was a junior officer on the SCHILDKRÖTE Oversight Committee. We made hard choices for the greater good, and we'd do it again if necessary. The admission changed everything. Baumann pulled out a small recording device from his pocket, showing it to Steinberg. That's all we needed, he said. General Rolf Steinberg, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, war crimes, and violation of the Geneva Convention. Steinberg's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in fury. You can't arrest me. I'm a general officer in the Bundeswehr. Actually, he can, Thompson said, producing his own set of handcuffs. This is a joint facility, remember? And I have authorization from NATO command to detain anyone involved in SCHILDKRÖTE, regardless of rank. The MPs looked uncertain, their weapons still drawn but not aimed at anyone in particular. Stand down, soldiers, Baumann ordered. General Steinberg is relieved of command pending investigation. For a moment, nobody moved. Then slowly the MPs lowered their weapons. The interrogation room in the garrison security building had seen many subjects over the years, but never a German general. Steinberg sat ramrod straight, his uniform still perfect despite having been in custody for 6 hours. Across from him, Baumann and Thompson conducted the questioning while Clara Weiss took notes. Let's go back to 1971, Thompson said. The death of Dr. Strauss and her team. You were a captain then, assigned to military intelligence. Tell us what really happened. Steinberg remained silent, his eyes fixed on a point just over Thompson's shoulder. We already know Tobias Lehmann didn't die in that van, Baumann added. His body was in the mass grave. So who did die that night? Still nothing. General cooperation might help your situation, Thompson tried. The prosecutors will take it into consideration. There were no prosecutors coming for us then, and there won't be now. Steinberg finally spoke, his voice confident. You think you've uncovered some great conspiracy, but you've barely scratched the surface. SCHILDKRÖTE was one small program among dozens. Every NATO nation had similar projects. The Americans had MK Ultra. The British had their own variants. We were in a war, gentlemen, even if it was a cold one. That doesn't justify murdering civilians, Baumann said. Doesn't it? How many civilians died in the bombing of Dresden, of Hamburg? War has always required sacrifice. The only difference is we made our sacrifices in secret to prevent a nuclear holocaust. You keep saying we, Thompson noted. Who else was involved? Steinberg laughed. You want names? Fine, but it won't matter. Half of them are dead, and the other half are untouchable. Ministers, generals, intelligence chiefs across Europe and America. You can't fight this, Major. It's bigger than all of us. Before anyone could respond, the door burst open. Celine Demir rushed in, her face pale with urgency. Colonel, we have a problem. Dr. Hartmann is missing and his laboratory has been destroyed. There was an explosion 20 minutes ago. Baumann jumped to his feet. Casualties. 3 injured. No deaths. But sir, all the SCHILDKRÖTE documents, the evidence we collected, it was all in that lab. It's gone. Steinberg's smile was smug. As I said, bigger than all of us. Thompson grabbed his radio, barking orders for the base to be sealed, but Baumann knew it was probably too late. Whoever had destroyed the lab was likely long gone. Watch him, Baumann told the MPs guarding Steinberg, then followed Demir out of the building. The laboratory was a smoking ruin. Fire crews were still hosing down the wreckage, and the acrid smell of burned chemicals hung in the air. Dr. Sophie Lang stood nearby, her medical bag at her feet, having just finished treating the injured. The explosion was professional, she told Baumann. Thermite charges placed at structural weak points. The lab didn't just blow up. It was systematically destroyed. Any sign of Dr. Hartman? None. But, Colonel, I found something strange. One of the injured was a lab tech named Isabel Kruger. She was supposedly working late, but when I treated her injuries, I noticed something. Lang held up a small evidence bag containing what looked like a small electronic device. This was embedded in her shoulder. It's a tracking device, military grade. She was being monitored, or she was monitoring others. Colonel, I don't think she's really a lab tech. Baumann's radio crackled to life. It was Matthias Riedel from the security team. Sir, we found Dr. Hartman. You need to see this. They found Hartman in his own home, seated at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. He'd been shot once in the head, execution style. On the table in front of him was a laptop displaying a message. The past should remain buried. Those who dig too deep will find only graves, including their own. This is your only warning. Check the laptop, Baumann ordered. Carefully. There might be more. As the forensics team worked, Eric Schaefer arrived with his wife, Anya. She looked terrified, clutching her husband's arm. We're not safe here, she said. None of us are. They killed Dr. Hartman because he knew too much. We'll be next. We're under military protection, Thompson assured her. No one's going to. His words were cut off by the sound of gunfire from outside. Everyone dropped to the floor as windows shattered. Automatic weapons fire raked the building, sending splinters of wood and chunks of plaster flying. Movement in the tree line, someone shouted. Baumann crawled to a window, peering out carefully. He could see muzzle flashes from at least 3 positions. This wasn't random. It was a coordinated assault. They're trying to eliminate all witnesses, he realized aloud. The shooting stopped as suddenly as it had started. In the silence that followed, Baumann's radio came to life again. Colonel, this is the main gate. We have a situation. There are about 50 civilian vehicles approaching, loaded with what looks like press. Someone tipped off the media about the murders. It was brilliant, Baumann had to admit. Whoever was behind this had created chaos on multiple fronts. With the media descending on the base, they couldn't conduct a proper investigation or pursue the shooters. Everything would become a circus of accusations and denials. We need to get the Schaefers to safety, Thompson said. If they're targeting witnesses... No, Eric Schaefer interrupted. We're safer in public. That's why I contacted the journalists. It's our only protection now. Before anyone could argue, Clara Weiss burst through the door, her weapon drawn. Steinberg's escaped, she announced. The MPs guarding him are dead. Professional hits, close range. How is that possible? Thompson demanded. Inside help. Someone in our own ranks. Weiss looked directly at Baumann. Sir, I've been investigating something on my own. 3 days ago, I noticed discrepancies in the duty rosters. People assigned to shifts they never showed up for, security codes accessed by personnel who were supposedly off base. Someone has been manipulating our systems for months. Who? I traced it back to a single authorization code. It belongs to Victor Novak. Novak's dead, Thompson reminded her. Yes, but his access was used 2 hours after his supposed time of death. Either someone stole his codes, or he faked his death. Baumann finished. Get a team to the morgue. I want that body verified immediately. 20 minutes later, they had their answer. The body in the morgue wasn't Victor Novak. Dental records confirmed it was actually a homeless man from Frankfurt who'd gone missing a week earlier. Novak's alive and running this operation, Thompson said. But why? What's his endgame? To bury SCHILDKRÖTE permanently, Baumann replied. And everyone who knows about it. His phone rang. The number was blocked, but Baumann answered anyway. "Hello, Colonel." The voice was unmistakably Novak's, though it carried an accent Baumann couldn't quite place. "I suppose you've figured it out by now." "Where are you, Victor?" "Far from your reach, but close enough to watch you fumble in the dark. You should have heeded the warnings, Jürgen. Some secrets are meant to stay buried. The truth will come out. We have evidence. You have nothing. The documents are destroyed, the bodies will disappear again, and anyone who talks will be silenced. This is bigger than you comprehend." "Then help me understand. Why are you doing this?" There was a pause. "Because I was one of them, Colonel. One of the test subjects who survived SCHILDKRÖTE. The man you knew as Victor Novak died in 1962 in incredible agony as chemicals ate away at his mind. I took his identity, his life, and I've spent 30 years positioning myself to destroy everyone involved in that program." Baumann felt the blood drain from his face. "You're one of the victims." "I was Mehmet Yilmaz, a Turkish worker who came to Germany for a better life. Instead, I became a lab rat for your predecessors. They thought I died, but I survived. Changed, damaged, but alive. And I swore vengeance on everyone involved." "But Steinberg is a monster who deserves death, but not a quick one. He'll suffer as we suffered. As for you, Colonel, you have a choice. Walk away now, forget everything you've learned, or join the body count. You know I can't do that. Then you've signed your own death warrant. Goodbye, Colonel." The line went dead. Baumann looked at the others, who'd heard everything on speaker. "He's not working alone," Thompson said. "He couldn't have pulled all this off by himself." "Isabel Kruger," Lang said suddenly. "The fake lab tech. She must be part of his network." "Find her," Baumann ordered, "and get the Schaefers somewhere secure. We're going to—" The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, bathing everything in red light. Then they heard it. The sound of helicopters approaching fast. "Those aren't ours," Thompson said, checking his radio. "All NATO aircraft are accounted for." Through the window, Baumann could see 3 black helicopters with no markings descending on the base. Ropes dropped from their sides, and tactical teams in black gear fast roped down. "They're heading for the morgue," Weiss observed. "They're going to take the bodies." "Not if we stop them first." Baumann grabbed his weapon. "Thompson, get your men. We're not letting them erase this evidence." The firefight at the morgue lasted 17 minutes. When the smoke cleared, 2 of the unmarked helicopters had fled, leaving behind 3 dead operatives in black tactical gear. The 3rd helicopter sat damaged on the tarmac, its pilot in custody. But they'd been too late. Half of the exhumed bodies were gone. In the garrison's emergency command center, Baumann stood before a wall of monitors showing news feeds from around the world. The story had broken globally. "Mass graves found at NATO base," screamed the headlines. "Cold War atrocities uncovered," declared another. "It's a disaster," Thompson said, fielding his 10th call from NATO headquarters in the past hour. "They want answers I don't have." "At least the story is out," Eric Schaefer said from where he sat with his wife. "They can't hide it now." "Can't they?" Clara Weiss entered carrying a tablet. "Look at this." The narrative is already changing. Official statements are calling it a misunderstanding. They're saying the bodies are from World War II, casualties that were improperly buried. The government is promising a full investigation that will likely take years and find nothing. "What about Steinberg's confession?" Baumann asked. "Inadmissible. His lawyers are claiming coercion, mental distress. He's already been released to house arrest, pending review." Baumann slammed his fist on the table in frustration. Despite everything they'd uncovered, the system was protecting itself as it always did. "We still have one card to play," Thompson said. "The pilot we captured. He's been talking. They found the pilot in interrogation, a young man no older than 25, clearly terrified. Leon Vogel was questioning him, while Celine Demir translated. The pilot spoke only Russian and broken German. He says he was hired through intermediaries, Demir explained. Paid in cash, told it was a sanctioned operation to recover hazardous materials. He didn't know about the bodies until they started loading them. Who hired him? Baumann demanded. The pilot spoke rapidly in Russian, gesturing frantically. He says the contact was a woman, German, blonde, early 30s. She had a scar on her left hand, called herself the Curator. Isabel Kruger, Dr. Lang said. Has to be. The lab tech who disappeared. He has an address. Demir continued translating. A warehouse in Frankfurt, where they were supposed to deliver the bodies. Baumann checked his watch. That's 2 hours from here. If we move now, it's probably a trap, Thompson warned. Everything's been a trap, but we're running out of options. The warehouse district in Frankfurt was deserted at 3 a.m. Baumann's team approached carefully. Himself, Thompson, Weiss, Vogel, Riedel, and a squad of Thompson's most trusted Americans. They'd left the Schaefers in protective custody back at the base. The target building was an abandoned manufacturing facility, its windows boarded up, parking lot cracked and overgrown with weeds. But fresh tire tracks in the mud told a different story. Thermal imaging shows at least 12 people inside, Weiss reported, studying her equipment. And something else, massive heat signatures in the basement, industrial furnaces maybe. They're going to cremate the bodies, Thompson realized. Destroy the last evidence. Not if we stop them. Vogel, Riedel, take the rear. Weiss, you're with me on the main entrance. Thompson, your team takes the loading dock. They moved simultaneously, breaching 3 entry points. The resistance was immediate and fierce. Automatic weapons fire erupted from prepared positions. Baumann ducked behind a concrete pillar as the bullets chipped away at its edges. Flash bang out, someone yelled. The explosion of light and sound disoriented everyone. Baumann pushed forward, his weapon raised, muscle memory from years of training taking over. He dropped 2 hostiles in quick succession, their weapons clattering across the floor. Basement stairs, northwest corner. Thompson's voice crackled through the radio. They fought their way through the warehouse, room by room. These weren't random mercenaries. They moved with military precision, covering each other's retreats, laying down suppressing fire. In one room, Baumann found walls covered with photographs and documents, not just from SCHILDKRÖTE, but from dozens of similar programs across Europe. Names, dates, locations, all connected by red string like a conspiracy theorist's fever dream. My God, Weiss breathed beside him. This is everything. Every black project from the Cold War. The curator's been collecting it all, Baumann said. But why? A woman's voice echoed through the building's PA system, speaking accented English. Because someone must remember, Colonel Baumann. Someone must bear witness to the crimes committed in the name of freedom. Who are you? Baumann called out. I am what your Dr. Strauss created. One of her successes, you might say. The chemicals didn't kill me. They changed me. Enhanced me. Like Mehmet, who became Novak, I survived to seek justice. Where is Novak? Dead. Really dead this time. He served his purpose, but his rage made him sloppy. I am more focused. Basement's clear, Thompson's voice interrupted. But sir, you need to see this. They descended into the basement, where industrial cremation furnaces indeed stood ready. But the bodies weren't there. Instead, they found row upon row of filing cabinets, each meticulously labeled. It's all here, Thompson said, pulling out files. Not just SCHILDKRÖTE, operations from the US, Britain, France, Soviet Union, decades of human experimentation, assassination programs, biological weapons testing. She's been collecting evidence on everyone, Baumann realized. The woman's voice returned. Mutual assured destruction, Colonel. If one country tries to bury their crimes, I expose them all. The Americans can't hide MK Ultra if it means revealing Soviet programs. The Russians can't eliminate witnesses if it exposes British operations. A detente of atrocity. You're Isabel Kruger. That was one name. I've had many, but yes, I was the one in your lab, watching, waiting, ensuring the evidence survived. Then why destroy Hartmann's laboratory? I destroyed nothing. That was Steinberg's men trying to eliminate evidence. I merely ensured copies survived. Footsteps echoed from above. A woman descended the stairs, hands raised but showing no fear. She was indeed blonde, early 30s, with a prominent scar on her left hand, but her eyes were what struck Baumann. They held a depth of pain he'd rarely seen. I was 8 years old when they took my parents, she said, Turkish immigrants who nobody would miss. They told me they'd died in an accident. It took me 20 years to learn the truth. So you became Isabel Kruger, infiltrated the laboratory. Among other identities, I've been hunting the architects of these programs for 15 years. Steinberg was one of the last. Was? Thompson asked. She smiled coldly. Check your radio, Major. Thompson's radio crackled to life with urgent traffic. General Steinberg had been found dead in his home, apparent heart attack. But Baumann knew better. Certain chemicals could mimic heart failure perfectly. You killed him. Justice killed him, just as it killed the others over the years. The chemists who developed the drugs, the officers who selected the victims, the bureaucrats who covered it up. All gone, all looking like natural causes or accidents. That's not justice, that's revenge, Baumann said. Sometimes they're the same thing. But don't worry, Colonel. I'm finished now. The last of the truly guilty are dead. The evidence is here for you to do with as you wish. Expose it all or bury it again. The choice is yours. She pulled something from her pocket, a small device with a single button. Insurance policy, she explained. This building is wired with enough explosives to level a city block. You have 10 minutes to decide what evidence to take and what to leave. After that, she pressed the button and a timer began counting down on the wall. Choose wisely. Before anyone could stop her, she swallowed something, a small capsule she'd been hiding in her mouth. No! Dr. Lang, who'd arrived with reinforcements, rushed forward, but it was too late. The woman collapsed, convulsing briefly before going still. Cyanide, Lang confirmed, checking for a pulse that wasn't there. 9 minutes, Thompson shouted. We need to grab what we can and go. It was chaos. Everyone grabbed armfuls of files, focusing on SCHILDKRÖTE and related German programs. But there was so much more. Evidence of crimes that would shake the foundations of NATO, the UN, governments worldwide. We can't take it all, Weiss said, struggling with a box of documents. Then we take what we can prosecute, Baumann decided. Our crimes, our responsibility, the rest. He looked at the files documenting American and British programs. That's their burden to bear. They ran from the building with seconds to spare. The explosion, when it came, lit up the night sky and shattered windows for blocks. Within minutes, fire trucks and police swarmed the scene, but there was nothing left but rubble and ash. Epilogue. 3 months later, Colonel Jürgen Baumann sat in a Berlin courtroom, testifying before a special tribunal investigating SCHILDKRÖTE. The evidence they'd saved was enough to prosecute 12 former officials, though most were too old or infirm to serve real time. Eric and Anja Schäfer were in witness protection, their testimony crucial to the proceedings. Dr. Sophie Lang had become the lead forensic investigator, matching recovered remains to missing persons reports from the 1960s. 23 families finally had answers about their vanished loved ones. Major Thompson had faced his own investigations in the U.S., his discovery of related American programs causing a political firestorm. But like always, the system protected itself. A few scapegoats were punished, policies were revised, and everyone pretended the deeper rot didn't exist. Celine Demir had perhaps the most important job. She worked with the Turkish government to identify victims and notify families. It was heartbreaking work, but necessary. As for the mysterious woman who'd called herself Isabel Kruger, her real identity was never discovered. The body disappeared from the morgue the night after the warehouse explosion, leaving only questions. But Baumann knew the real question wasn't who she was, but what she represented. The victims who survived, scarred and changed, seeking justice in a world that preferred to forget its sins. Late at night, when he couldn't sleep, Baumann would think about all the files they couldn't save, the crimes that remained buried in that Frankfurt rubble. He wondered how many other warehouses existed, how many other collectors of truth were out there, waiting. The official report on the Mannheim Incident ran to 300 pages, most of it redacted. It concluded that while regrettable actions had been taken during the Cold War, they were products of their time, and no further investigation was warranted. But Baumann kept his own records, unredacted and complete. Someday, he knew, the full truth would come out. It always did, eventually. The dead demanded it, and there were always those willing to dig up the past, no matter how deep it was buried. On the first anniversary of the incident, Baumann received an unmarked envelope containing a single photograph. It showed a graveyard in Turkey where 23 new headstones had appeared overnight, each bearing the name of a Schildkröte victim. Written on the back was a simple message: some ghosts find peace, others still walk. The work continues. The curators. Baumann burned the photograph, but kept the message. It was a reminder that in the shadow world of intelligence and military secrets, the war between truth and lies never really ended. It just moved to new battlefields, fought by new soldiers with the same old stakes: justice for the dead and accountability for the living. The Mannheim Incident was officially closed, its files sealed for 50 years. But in the halls of military installations across Europe, in the whispered conversations of intelligence officers, in the nightmares of those who knew the truth, it lived on. A reminder that some secrets refuse to stay buried, and some crimes demand their reckoning, no matter how long it takes. The rain had started again, drumming against Baumann's office window, just as it had that night 3 months ago. He stood watching it, thinking about all those who died for the truth. Hartmann, Arslan, the woman who'd orchestrated it all. They'd paid the ultimate price to expose crimes most people would never know about. His phone rang. Another incident, another mystery requiring investigation. Baumann answered it, already knowing he'd take the case, because someone had to bear witness. Someone had to remember. Someone had to keep digging up the truth, no matter how deep it was buried.